Hello, everybody, and welcome to AT Daily on a Wednesday. What time is it? 6:06. I'm so sorry. Another one of those. It's the same exact system every day, and for some reason, on some days, the streaming system just refuses to connect, and I have to reboot and restart and try again, and then it does work, and nothing changed, and I don't know why. And as Bill likes to say, gremlins. Welcome, everybody. Let's light up the darkness. Who's in the house? Yehud in South Carolina, Bella in Florida, Melissa in Great Neck, Shandor in the Bronx, Bill in mid-Missouri, Joseph in Sierra Nevada, Renee in Indiana, Guy in Ohio, Nancy in North Carolina, Joe in the Inland Empire, Lorraine in Texas, Belle in Texas, Lucy in Minnesota, Annette in Fort Lauderdale. Annette, that's a new name. Welcome. Great to have you with us. Sharon in New Jersey. Chaim in Florida, Ella in Southern California, Alan in New York City, Aoife in Florida, Marie in Freeport. But you do make it, Sal, says Lucy. Thank God. Everything is by the grace of God. We're picking this up right near the top of page 11b, and with God's help, we'll get to the end and a little further than page 12. Our daf today is page 12, Yud Beis, here in Tractate Avoda Zara, 27th volume of the Talmud. Continuing our discussion of Mishna number 3 in chapter 1, which, God willing, will close, open and complete Mishnah 4, and get going on Mishnah 5. Okay, right near the top of 11b, generally speaking, we're talking about the prohibition on doing business with idolaters near their festival or on their festival, because it'll give them reasons to rejoice and possibly make another offering, an extra offering or a bigger offering on their idolatrous holiday. And so we would have somehow participated in idolatry, which we distance ourselves from in every possible way. And nor do we want to put a stumbling block before the blind, because all humans are prohibited to commit idolatry. So we'd like to help people along and not encourage them in any way from coming to commit that transgression. Not just Jews. All humans are prohibited in the sin of idolatry. Okay, near the top of 11b, the Mishnah teaches that the day of shaving his beard and his locks, right? So this is, said our Mishnah, this is an idolatrous festival for the idolaters in question. We're mostly talking about Rome here, the Roman Empire, which was occupying the Holy Land in the times of the Gemara. So apparently they would make an idolatrous practice and festival, or on this idolatrous festival, they would cut their beard or their hair in a particular way. And a dilemma was raised before the sages. What is the Mishnah teaching here? Is it referring to the day of shaving his beard and his head, when he cuts the hair of his head, and as a result, his long locks at the back of his head are left as a form of idol worship? Or perhaps the Mishnah is speaking of the day of shaving his beard and removing his locks, which are removed sometime after they were left on the head. And the Gemara responds, come in here and answer, as both opinions are taught in Baraisas. One Baraisa mentions the day of shaving his beard and head when his long locks at the back of his head are left, whereas a different Baraisa specifies the day of shaving his beard and removing his locks. In other words, it was some kind of complex idolatrous practice to do a particular kind of haircut on one date, one festival, and then complete that haircut, move this other part of the hair or the beard on a different festival. And you knew that these festivals were happening if the idolaters, the Romans, were having those kind of haircuts, and then we don't do business with them in the days leading up to that festival or on that festival. So the Gemara continues to discuss Roman festivals. Rav Yehuda says that Shmuel says they have another festival in Rome once every 70 years. And they bring a man who is whole, meaning healthy, and free from any defect, and they have him ride on a lame man, right? Somebody who is somehow has a disability, to symbolize the healthy Esau ruling over Jacob, who walked with a limp after his fight with the angel. And they dress him in the garments of Adam, the first man, and place on his head the scalp of Rabbi Ishmael, which the Romans flayed when they executed him for teaching Torah. Right? It seems like this is a conscious assault on Judaism, on Torah, on the dignity of the Jewish people that was incorporated into this very infrequent but very big festival. And there's a note here about this these kinds of festivals. They have another festival in Rome, and it's apparently referring to something called the secular games. Very interesting. When they would have like this very large festival, it was originally intended to be once in 100 years, every 100 years, but they ended up doing it like once every 70 years. But it was billed, right, advertised to the public. Remember, the Romans came up with this concept, bread and circuses, right? And they would bill it to the public as a spectacle unlike any you've ever seen, because it never happened in your lifetime, right? Even if you're so old that you were there for the last one, you know, you can barely remember it, something every 70 years. And as part of this public spectacle, you know, they would include denigrating the Jews, probably torturing other kinds of Roman enemies as well, but specifically, right, mocking the Jews and Torah, and displaying proudly, right, the scalp of a great sage, Rabbi Ishmael, whom they burned at the stake, but first they flayed him, right, tortured him by taking off his skin. And they hang gold on his neck, weighing 200 dinars, and cover the markets with onyx, and announce before him the calculation of the master, Jacob, with regard to the time of the redemption, is fraudulent. The brother of our master, meaning Esau, the brother of Esau, meaning Jacob, is a forger. And they further announce, one who witnesses this festival witnesses it, and whoever does not witness it will not witness it ever, and it was celebrated only once every 70 years. And what purpose does deceit serve for the deceiver and forgery for the forger? And they conclude in this fashion, woe unto this one, Esau, when that one, Jacob, will arise, as this will cause Esau's downfall. So it's like they're recognizing that the Jewish people have these prophecies that they will outlive the wicked Roman Empire, and that in their rise, so to speak, that will be the downfall of Rome, and they were right. But you know that while the Roman Empire was in power, they would mock these people who had a prophecy that one day the Roman Empire would fall. Rav Ashi says the mouths of these wicked people have caused their downfall. Had they said a forger is the brother of our master, their claim would be interpreted as they say and wish to be understood. Now that they say the brother of our master, a forger, they can be understood as saying it is our master himself who is the forger, meaning Esau. Remember that Rome is understood to be the descendants of Jacob's brother Esau. The Gemara asks, and what is the reason that the Tana of our Mishnah does not count this festival in his list of idolatrous festivals? And the Gemara answers, the Tana of the Mishnah counts those festivals that occur each and every year. And he does not count those festivals that do not occur each and every year. That's going to become important when we come back to the Arab festivals in a moment. Now the Gemara comments, those festivals enumerated in the Mishnah are the festivals of the Romans. And the Gemara asks, what are the idolatrous festivals of the Persians? And the Gemara answers, Mutrideh and Turiaske, Moharneke, and Moharin. And the Gemara asks, these are the festivals of the Persians and the Romans. And what are the festivals of the Babylonians? And the Gemara answers, Moharnarke and Akenite, Bechanune, and the 10th of Adar, right? Measured on the Hebrew calendar is the 10th of Adar, but somehow this is a Babylonian festival. New subject. Rav Chanan bar Rav Chizda says that Rav says, and some say that it was Rav Chanan bar Rava who says that Rav says, there are 5 established temples of idol worship, not in the whole world, obviously, but relevant to the Jewish population in and around the Holy Land. And in Babylonia, right? And so what are these particular 5 established temples of idol worship? They are the temple of Bel in Babylonia, the temple of Nebo in the city of Kursay, and this idolatrous deity Nebo is the same one whose name is incorporated into the names of Babylonian kings like Nebuchadnezzar. Where am I? Nebo in the city of Kursay, and the temple of Tirata, which is located in the city of Mapag. Tzarifa, which is located in Ashkelon, right? That's part of Israel. And Nashra, which is located in Arabia. When Rav Dimi came from Eretz Yisrael to Babel, he said the sages added to these places the marketplace that is located in Ein Bechi and Nadbecha, which is located in Akko. And there are those who say that Rav Dimi was referring to Nadbera, that is located in Akko. And Rav Dimi from Nehardea teaches the opposite, that it is the marketplace that is located in Akko, and Nadbecha that is located in Ein Beki. Akko is in the north of Israel, as I recall. Rav Chanan bar Rav Chizda said to Rav Chizda, what does it mean that these temples of idol worship are established? And Rav Chizda said to him, this is what your mother's father, Rav Chanan bar Rava, said. In contrast to festivals which last for 1 or several days, they are always fixed as the site of idol worship. Constantly, all year round, worship takes place there. Right? So we've been talking about idolatrous festivals that come once a year, and whether we can do business with the idolaters on those days or the preceding days. But they have these like large idolatrous temples, which are a center of that kind of idol worship. And there they're sacrificing, animals and other kinds of offerings to their idolatrous religion every day. Right? And so we are not going to go anywhere near those places. Shmuel says the law is that in the diaspora, engaging in business with idolaters is prohibited only on the day of their festival itself, not during those 3 days preceding and following the festival. And since Jews live among the idolaters, they are unable to refrain from engaging in business with them for such an extended period. So the Gemara asks, and is it prohibited even on their festival day itself? But didn't Rav Yehuda permit Rav Baruna to sell wine to idolaters? And he permitted Rav Giddel to sell wheat on the festival of the Arab merchants. And the Gemara answers, the festival of the Arab merchants is different, as it does not have a fixed time, and therefore the sages did not include it in the prohibition. Now, what's interesting about talking about the Arabs in this context, remember that the Gemara was closed around the year 500 of the Common Era. So the sages, the Tanaim, of the Gemara. They're living somewhere between when the Mishnah was closed in the year 200 of the Common Era and, when it was ended, 500, right? That 300-year period, more or less, between the year 200 and the year 500. So in the year 200, Rome is in full swing. By the time of the year 500, Rome has really declined or even fallen. But this whole period, when we talk about Arabs as idolaters, some people would say, well, wait a minute, Islam, that's not really idolatrous. They believe in one God. It's a monotheistic religion. But Islam did not exist yet. This is all happening in the Holy Land and in Babel long before Islam had even been dreamed up. It did not exist yet. And so there were Arabs who had different kinds of religions and religious practices, but a lot of it was most certainly idolatrous. Okay, and that concludes our discussion of Mishnah number 3. Now, Mishnah 4. In the case of a city in which there is active idolatry, it is permitted to engage in business transactions with the idolaters who live outside of the city. If the idolatry is outside the city, it's permitted to engage in business with the idolaters in the city. What is the law with regard to traveling there, a place where this pagan festival is being celebrated? Answer: when the road is designated only for that place, it is prohibited to use the road, as onlookers will assume that the traveler intends to join the idolatrous festival. But if one were able to travel on it to arrive to some other place, then it is permitted to use the road to reach the place that is observing the festival, right? So, get it? If the road is leading to a city and the only place that road is going is to a city that's currently involved in an idolatrous festival, a Jew can't be on that road. But if that road leads to other places besides the city where the idolatrous festival is taking place, then it's permitted for the Jew to use that road. Okay, that's Mishnah number 4 here in chapter 1. Now, the Gemara. The Gemara asks, what are the circumstances that determine whether a place is sufficiently far from a city to be considered outside of it? So Rabbi Shimon ben Lakish says in the name of Rabbi Hanina, a place that is far enough away is, for example, the bazaar, like a bazaar, not bizarre, but bazaar, like a marketplace. The bazaar, which is the way they're translating the word atlusa, of Gaza. Right? Gaza is an ancient city in the Holy Land. Jews were there long ago, thousands of years ago. Right, so the bazaar of Gaza. This is located outside the city walls. And some say that Rabbi Shimon ben Lakish asked Rabbi Hanina about this issue. What is the law with regard to the bazaar of Gaza? May one conduct business there on the day of an idolatrous festival being celebrated in Gaza? And Rabbi Hanina said to him, did you ever in your lifetime travel to, how do you pronounce Tyre? Right, Tyre, Tyre, that's a city, I believe, in Syria. Tyre, that's one of those words I've read many times and never have cause to say it out loud. I'm not sure how you pronounce Tyre. Is it Tyre, Tyre? How do you pronounce that city name? At any rate, did you ever in your lifetime travel to Tyre and see a Jew and a Gentile place 2 pots on one stove? And yet the sages were not concerned and did not issue a prohibition with regard to the meat that was in the pot belonging to the Jew, despite the fact that forbidden food was being cooked in close proximity to the permitted food. Tyre. Thank you. Oh, the adjective, no, the noun is Tyre. Thank you. And the adjective is Tyre. Interesting. Tyre, like Tyrian. Okay. Very good. So the point is that the sages did permit somebody who's traveling, right, among non-Jews who are eating all kinds of food that's prohibited for Jews to eat. So, we, in the old days, right, they had much less amenities than you have today. Obviously, so people, would bring food with them or buy food in a marketplace when they were traveling, then they would need to cook it themselves. And so a Jew is going to bring his own pot to cook in, but he might put it on a kind of, stove or oven, like some kind of a hot surface, right? Where a non-Jew has his own pot right next to the pot of the Jew, right? So, the Jew is cooking his kosher food right next to a non-Jew cooking non-kosher food. Same stove, separate pots. Is it permitted, right? Because it's close proximity, the permitted food to the prohibited food. Answer, yes. Otherwise the Jew is not going to be able to travel and eat. So that is permitted. So why are they saying that? Because for the same reason, the Jew can go to the bazaar in Gaza, which is outside the city walls, where they are practicing this idolatrous festival. And the Gemara asks, what did he mean in stating the sages were not concerned with regard to the meat? And how does that case relate to the issue here? And Abaye said the sages were not concerned with regard to the possibility of eating the meat of a nevela, right? A nevela is a kosher animal that was not slaughtered in a kosher manner and therefore is not permitted for a Jew to eat it. And we do not say that cooking in this manner is prohibited, since perhaps the Jew will turn his face away at the moment that the non-Jew will throw meat of his nevela into his pot, right? Like that for some reason, the non-Jew who's cooking his own food and knows that the Jew is not permitted to eat that food, out of some kind of malice, will, basically throw away some of his own food and throw it into the pot of the Jewish person in order just to, mess with the Jew and make him eat something that is, without unknowingly eat something that is prohibited for him. And the point is, you might have thought that we'd have a concern about that, but the sages are not concerned because the psychology of that is so, such a reach that that's just not going to happen. It could happen theoretically, but it's such a weird thing for it to happen that it's not something we have to regulate everybody's behavior on. We're not concerned. The Jew can cook his food on the pot, even though there's a non-Jew cooking in a pot nearby. In those old days, in those traveling situations. We're not saying that now in the modern times, when there's many more amenities, like it's not permitted for a Jew to say, walk into a non-kosher restaurant with his pot and say, can I cook my food in this pot and eat it here? That causes all kinds of problems and difficulties. And in 99 out of 100 situations, your local Orthodox rabbi will say, no, don't do that. There may be some weird situations where there would be a permit for that. Talk to your rabbi. Assume it's not permitted. Okay, but here, in these situations, it was. So Abaye said, the sages were not concerned with regard to the possibility that the non-Jew will throw his meat into the pot of the Jew when the Jew is not looking. Here too, in the corresponding situation, right, about traveling to this marketplace near a city where there's a festival going on, here too, in the corresponding situation, although the permitted and prohibited places are in close proximity to each other, the sages were not concerned about engaging in business transactions in the bazaar of Gaza, even due to the possibility that money associated with idol worship would end up in the hands of the Jews. If the money were for the purchase of an animal used as an offering for idolatry, those coins would be prohibited by Torah law. Nevertheless, the sages were not concerned about this possibility, just as they were not concerned about that the non-Jew might add his meat to the pot of the Jew. We are on page 12a, and we've been there for a couple paragraphs. Rava said that there is a different explanation. The sages were not lenient in the face of a potential violation of Torah law, but they were lenient in a case where it was a rabbinic law that might be violated. As for Rabbi Hanina's comparison to pots in Tyre, there is no concern that a Gentile might throw his meat into the pot of a Jew, as he would derive no benefit from doing so and would be afraid that the Jew might see him. By contrast, here the Gentile is engaged in business. So rather, what is it that the sages were not concerned about in the case of the pots? Although the Gentile is cooking food next to the Jew, there is no concern with regard to the possibility that the Gentile might cook the Jew's food, causing the latter to violate the rabbinic prohibition against eating food cooked by Gentiles. It's not permitted, but it's a rabbinic prohibition, and on rabbinic prohibitions, when there's a question, we rule leniently, whereas on Torah prohibitions, when there's a case of doubt or question, we rule stringently. Rabba Bar Ula says, even if the concern in the case of the pots applied only to the non-Jew cooking the Jew's food and not the consumption of non-kosher meat. With regard to the bazaar in Gaza, the halacha would not be comparably lenient, and the reason is the Jew need only stir the coals once to ensure that the food in his pot is not considered cooked by a Gentile, an option that does not apply to visiting the marketplace in Gaza. So rather, in the case mentioned by Rabbi Hanina, the sages were not concerned with regard to the possibility that food might splatter from the non-Jew's pot into the Jew's pot. This is an especially lenient case, both because this is an unlikely possibility and because that small amount of food would be nullified by the majority of the Jew's food. Like one drop getting from one pot to another, it's going to be much less than 1 in 60, and so it would be nullified on top of the fact that it's so unlikely to happen in the first place. Rabbi Bar Ula concludes, so here too in the corresponding situation, the sages were not concerned about engaging in business transactions in the bazaar of Gaza with regard to the days before the festival of Gaza. And this is an analogous case to that of the splattered food, as it is outside the festival in both time and place. New subject. The Mishnah teaches, what is the law with regard to traveling there, a place that is celebrating a pagan festival? If the road leads only to that place, said the Mishnah, it is prohibited, but if the road leads to another place as well, then one can use that road. In this connection, the Gemara cites a related baraisa. The sages taught, in the case of a city in which there is active idolatry, i.e. the residents are worshiping their idol on that day, right? They're having a festival that day. It is prohibited to enter the city, and one may not leave it for another city. If you're already in there, you can't be on the road, neither going to it nor leaving it. If you're there already, you have to lay low and not, venture outside your hotel, as it were. This is the statement of Rabbi Meir. And the rabbis say, as long as the road is designated only for that place, it's prohibited to enter the city. But if the road will lead to some other place, then it is permitted. The Baraisa continues, if a thorn became embedded in one's foot while he was standing before an object of idol worship, he may not bend down and remove the thorn because he appears to be bowing down to the object of idol worship. But if he is not seen, then it is permitted, right? So this is this idea of the appearance of impropriety, right? So you have to be mindful, right? Okay, so you stubbed your foot, you have a thorn in your foot, you want to bend down just to remove the thorn or tend to your toe, but if bending down is going to happen right in front of an idol where people are going to look at you and say, oh, that guy is bowing down to the idol, then you can't do it. You have to step away from there and make sure that you don't even have an appearance of engaging in idolatry. If one's coins were scattered while he is before an object of idol worship, he may not bend down and pick up the coins because he appears to be bowing down to the object of idol worship. But if no one is there to watch him do it, then it is permitted because he knows he's not bowing down to the idol. Likewise, if there is a spring that runs before an object of idol worship, one may not bend down and drink from it because he appears to be bowing down to the object of idol worship. But if there's no one there to see him do it, it is permitted. With regard to figures of human faces that spray water in the cities, i.e. fountains, one may not place his mouth on the mouths of the figures and drink because he appears to be kissing the object of idol worship. This is fascinating, and there's a little image here, if you can see it. And that's basically in one of these ancient cities, and there's sometimes you even see this in modern cities. They had water fountains, right? They had water fountains in the ancient world, but it wasn't the kind, right, where you press a button and then you get a nice arc of water that you could dip your mouth into. Rather, it was just a pipe, that came out of a wall, and it's just constantly water flowing out of it, a little bit like a fountain, being caught in some kind of a basin below it, and people could just, put their mouth on the end of the pipe and drink that water. Forget about the sanitary issues. But what they would sometimes do is surround the end of that pipe that sticks out of the wall with some kind of decorative art. And sometimes that decorative art was actually the face of one of the idolatrous deities that the people in that city worship. So then if you put your mouth to that pipe where the water's coming out, it looks like you're kissing that idolatrous deity. And that's, a form of idolatry, and it's prohibited. And similarly, one may not place his mouth on a pipe and drink, even if there wasn't an idolatry problem, due to the danger that this practice poses. Don't put your mouth on the end of a pipe and drink water that's just flowing in a public place. Why? The Gemara asks, what does the Baraisa mean when it states, if he is not seen? It means that he is not seen by others. If we say that it means he's not seen by others, doesn't Rav Yehuda say that Rav says, wherever the sage is prohibited in action due to the appearance of a prohibition, it is prohibited even in the innermost chambers where no one will see it. So how can you say it's permitted if no one will see it? As the sages did not distinguish between different circumstances in such cases. Accordingly, the fact that he is not seen by anyone should make no difference with regard to whether or not the action is prohibited. Rather, you should say, if he is not seen as one who bows down to an object of idol worship, i.e. he turns his side or back to the idol, then it is permitted, right? Not that someone will see him do an action that if someone saw it, it would look like bowing to an idol, then the fact that no one is around to see it does not mean it's permitted, because you don't know who's around, and even if you're inside your house and all the doors are closed, if it has the appearance of impropriety as if someone was there, you can't do it. What they're saying is, yeah, but if he, gets the thorn out of his toe, or picks up the money, or drinks the water, arranging his body so that no one could confuse that action, no matter what angle they were looking from, with an act of idolatry, then it would be permitted. And the Gemara comments, and it is necessary for the Baraisa to list all these cases, notwithstanding their similarity, as if it had taught only the case of the thorn in his toe, one might have thought that bending down to remove a thorn is prohibited because it is possible to walk past the figure and only then take out the thorn. But in the case of the coins, where it is not possible to collect them elsewhere, you might say that it is not prohibited to pick them up. And if furthermore, if the Baraisa had taught only the case of the coins, one might have thought that the reason for the stringent ruling is that the loss is purely financial. But in the case of the thorn, which causes him pain, you might say that it is not prohibited to remove it. And finally, the Baraisa had taught only these two cases. One might have thought that they are prohibited because there is no danger, the action is not performed on the spot. But in the case of the spring, where there is an element of danger, that if he does not drink, he might die of thirst, one could say that it is not prohibited, therefore it is necessary to state each example. Now we're on page 12b. And the Gemara asks, why do I need the Baraisa to teach that it is prohibited to drink from fountains formed in the figure of human faces? If the reason is to teach the law in a life-threatening situation, the Baraisa has already addressed this issue in the case of the spring. So the Gemara answers it was included because the Baraisa wanted to teach the continuation of that law, where it said, similarly, one may not place his mouth on a pipe and drink due to the danger that it poses. And so now the Gemara asks, what danger is the Baraisa referring to here? Right? They didn't know about germs. So what is the danger of putting your mouth on the end of a pipe and drinking water in a public place? And the Gemara answers, this is referring to the danger of swallowing a leech in the water. As the sages taught, a person should not drink water from rivers or from ponds, either by drinking from the water directly with his mouth or by collecting the water with one hand alone. And if he drank in this manner, his blood is upon his own head due to the danger. And the Gemara explains, what is the danger? It is the danger of swallowing a leech. I'm good with that. I will not be drinking water in any situation where there's any possibility that I might drink a leech. That sounds awful. Leeches, by the way, do have medicinal value, right? I mean, especially in the ancient world, where bleeding a person, right, drawing blood, was considered an important kind of medicine, right? The bloodletters would do that. That was a kind of medical practice. Usually they would just make an incision, in your vein and drain out some blood. There was also cupping, right? But there was also medicinal leeches that they would attach to you and draw out some of your blood. And that was understood to somehow rebalance, the bodily fluids, the humors of the body. And apparently in some parts of the world, even today, leeches are used medicinally, but only on the surface of the skin. You don't want it going down your throat. And this supports the opinion of Rabbi Hanina, as Rabbi Hanina says, in the case of one who swallows a water leech known as a nema, it is permitted to perform labor on Shabbos and heat water for him to drink on Shabbos because his life is in danger. Remember, we will desecrate Shabbos at the drop of a hat if it's to save a life. And in fact, there was an incident involving one who swallowed a water leech, and Rabbi Nehemiah permitted them to heat water for him on Shabbos. And the Gemara asks, in the meantime, until the water is ready, what should he do? And Rav Huna, the son of Rav Yehoshua, said he should swallow vinegar, which is a way you get leeches off your skin too. And Rav Idi Bar Avin said, one who swallowed a hornet will not live, as the hornet will sting him to death. Nevertheless, they should give him a quarter log of sharp vinegar to drink. In this manner, it is possible that he will live for a bit longer until he can instruct his household with regard to his final wishes before he dies. And the sages taught a person should not drink water at night. And if he drank, his blood is upon his own head due to the danger. The Gemara asks, what is the danger? And the Gemara answers, the danger of a shavrire, an evil spirit that rules over water. And if he is thirsty, what is his remedy? Well, if there's another person with him, he should wake the other person and say to him, I'm thirsty for water, and then he can drink. Because, right, demons and evil spirits, which we encounter in other places in Talmud Bavli, attack people when they're alone, but don't attack people when there's two or more people present. And if there is no other person with him, he should knock with the lid on the jug and say to himself, so-and-so, son of so-and-so, your mother said to you, beware of the shavrire, verire, rire, yire, re, found in white cups. And this is an incantation against the evil spirit. You know, people who begin their learning Talmud are often surprised. You know, there's not much of a notion of demons and demonology in the Torah or even in the Jerusalem Talmud. But there is quite a bit in the Talmud Bavli, in the Babylonian Talmud, where the Jewish community, was learning in the vicinity of the Persian Empire, where there was quite a bit, of goings on involving harmful spirits, right, and demons. It's obviously beyond the scope of our class today, but there's lots of teachings about this. One idea is that when people commit very evil deeds, that deed creates a kind of residue in that place, which is a kind of evil spirit, a kind of demon is created there, which, sort of may help to explain a little bit of the concept of a haunted house, right? Often a haunted house or a haunted ruin, a haunted area. How did it get that way? Because some terrible crime was committed there and a kind of residue, spiritual energy is still there. At any rate, we've talked about demonology on other days and we will again, but not today. And that concludes our discussion of Mishnah number 4. Now Mishnah 5 here in chapter 1 of Tractate Avoda Zara. With regard to a city in which idol worship is practiced and in which there are stores that are adorned for the sake of idolatry, and there are other stores that are not adorned for this practice. This was in fact an incident that occurred in the city of Bet Shan, and the sages said, with regard to the adorned shops, it is prohibited to buy from them. But in the case of those that are not adorned, it is permitted. Right? You can do business with idolaters that don't have decorations on their store, meant basically to glorify their idols, their false idols. You don't want to do business with them when they've got that kind of adornment on their store. That's the Mishnah. Now the Gemara. Rabbi Shimon ben Lakish says they taught that buying is prohibited only in the case of stores that are adorned with roses and myrtle, as one derives benefit from their smell and they serve as offerings to the objects of idol worship. But with regard to stores that are adorned with fruit, it is permitted to buy from them. And what is the reason that they are permitted? As the verse states, and there shall cleave nothing dedicated to your hand, Deuteronomy 13:18, i.e. the items dedicated to idol worship. From here it is derived that it is prohibited to derive benefit from idol worship, but it is permitted to cause benefit. It's prohibited to derive benefit, permitted to cause benefit. What does this mean? Although by buying from the store one indirectly supports idol worship, as a portion of the sales are given to this idolater who engages in idol worship, this is not prohibited by Torah law. At the end of the day, you can do business with idolaters. And Rabbi Yochanan says, even if the stores are adorned only with fruit, one is also prohibited from buying from them. This is derived by the Kal V'chomer inference. If it is prohibited to derive benefit from idol worship, is it not all the more so prohibited to cause benefit to the one engaging in idol worship? We're on page 13a now, getting a little bit of a head start on tomorrow. The Gemara raises an objection to Reish Lakish's opinion from a Baraisa. Rabbi Nassan says, on the day in which a reduction is made from the tax in honor of idolatry, they announce and say, anyone who takes a wreath of roses and places it on his head and on the head of his donkey in honor of the object of idol worship, his tax will be reduced. And if one does not place a wreath on one's head, his tax will not be reduced, right? So here, where you're not going to engage in idolatrous practices, but it's going to cost you money if you're a Jew in such a place outside of Israel, or in Israel when it's being occupied by the Romans. So what do? What should a Jew who is present there do? If he places the wreath on his head and on the head of his donkey, he will be found to have derived benefit from idolatry. And if he does not place the wreath on his head, he will be found to cause benefit to idol worship through the increased tax that he pays. Right? So now it's a problem. Okay, he's not going to engage in idolatry, so he's not going to have his tax lowered. But because he's not engaging in idolatry, his tax is going to be higher than the other people around them. So it's like the city, the government of that city, where they're encouraging idolatry, is benefiting from the Jew through this idolatrous decree in the city. So what should the Jew do? From here, the sages stated, one who conducts business in a market of idol worship will be forced either to benefit from or cause benefit to idol worship. Therefore, any animal that he bought there should be destroyed, and any produce, clothing, or vessels should be left to decompose. And with regard to any money or metal vessels which would not decompose on their own, one should take them and cast them into the Dead Sea. And what constitutes destroying the animal? One cuts off the hooves of the animal from the knee and below. And the Gemara explains the objection to Reish Lakish's statement. But in any event, the Baraisa teaches that it is prohibited to cause benefit to idol worship. As it states, if he places the wreath on his head, then he will be found to derive benefit from idol worship. And if he does not place the wreath on his head, he will be found to cause benefit to idol worship. So how then can Reish Lakish claim that it is permitted to cause benefit to idol worship? So Rav Misharshia, the son of Rav Edi, said that Rabbi Shimon ben Lakish holds as follows. The rabbis disagree with Rabbi Nassan, whose opinion is cited in the Baraisa, and I spoke in accordance with the opinion of the rabbis who disagree with Rabbi Nassan. And the Gemara notes, and Rabbi Yochanan, who rules in accordance with the statement of Rabbi Nassan, holds that the rabbis do not disagree with Rabbi Nassan. Rather, everyone agrees that it is prohibited to cause benefit to idol worship. So whether you're going to derive benefit from it or cause benefit to it, idolatry is prohibited in every way, and a Jew needs to steer clear of it. And the Gemara asks, and is it so that they do not disagree? But isn't it taught in a Baraisa, one may go to a fair of the idolaters whose purpose is to honor idolatry and buy from the idolaters animals and slaves and maidservants, as the purchase raises the items to a more sanctified state. He's pulling these items out of the world of idolatry and into the world of sanctity by pulling it into a Jewish home. Sounds like it is permitted, but haven't you caused benefit to the idolaters? And he may buy houses, fields, and vineyards from them due to the mitzvah to settle the land of Israel. Right? We're talking about in the land of Israel. And one may write the necessary deeds and confirm them even in the courts of the idolaters, although this involves an acknowledgement of their authority, because it is as though he is rescuing his property from their hands, as the court's confirmation and stamp of approval prevents the seller from denying the sale and claiming that the property still belongs to him. So the only way to get that land into the Jewish possession when the Romans, for example, have power over the Holy Land is to confirm that sale in a court of the Romans, which is to say in an idolatrous court. So aren't we somehow causing benefit to the idolaters in this way? And if he is a priest, he may become ritually impure by going outside the land of Israel, even though a priest is usually prohibited from leaving the land of Israel to the impure lands outside. We say that all lands outside of Israel are impure because, when non-Jews are in charge of a nation, they don't care, where bodies are buried. They don't have laws like we do that say that if we walk over a grave, we become ritually impure and then we can't enter the Holy Temple when the temple is standing. Those laws don't apply to non-Jews, so there's no reason for them to ensure that every time somebody is buried, not in a cemetery but somewhere else, that grave gets marked. It's just not an important concern for them. It might be, but it's not necessarily so we can't count on that. And that's why we say that the lands outside of Eretz Yisrael are tameh, are impure. And just as a priest may become tameh by going outside of Eretz Yisrael, so may he become tameh for this purpose by entering a cemetery. So this is a long baraisa that we only need parts of it that are relevant to what we're talking about here. So the Gemara interrupts its citation of this baraisa to express surprise at this last ruling. It's a little digression now. Can it enter your mind to say that a priest, a Kohen, may become tameh by entering a cemetery? Even today, people who are Kohanim don't enter cemeteries unless it's to bury a family member, a close family member. So the law that a cemetery imparts tuma to a Kohen is by Torah law. How could sages override this prohibition? No, we don't. So rather, the Baraisa is referring to an area where there is uncertainty whether there's uncertainty with regard to the location of a grave or a corpse, owing to the fact that the grave may have been unwittingly plowed over and the bones may have become scattered in the field. Such a field imparts tuma, the whole field imparts tuma by rabbinic law because of that uncertainty. Now, back to the Baraisa. And a priest may likewise become tameh and leave the land of Israel in order to study Torah or in order to marry a woman. So Rabbi Yehuda says, when does this allowance apply? It applies when he cannot find a place to study in Eretz Yisrael. But when the priest can find a place to study in Eretz Yisrael, he may not become tameh by leaving the country. And Rabbi Yosef says, even when he can find a place to study Torah inside of Eretz Yisrael, he may leave the country and become tameh, because a person does not merit to learn from everyone, and it is possible that the more suitable teacher for him leaves outside of Eretz Yisrael, the land of Israel. So Rabbi Yosef says, in support of his opinion, there was an incident involving Yosef the priest, who followed his teacher to the city of Sidon, outside of Eretz Yisrael, to learn Torah, even though the preeminent sage of his generation, Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, lived inside of Eretz Yisrael. And Rabbi Yochanan says about this, the law is in accordance with the opinion of Rabbi Yosef. I'm almost done, very close to done. Questions or comments, please get them in now. Caught me a little bit by surprise. And so the Gemara returns to the issue at hand. This Baraisa apparently indicates that the rabbis do disagree with Rabbi Nassan, as they hold that it is permitted to buy items from an idolater's fair, a bazaar, and cause benefit to his idolatry, whereas the ruling of Rabbi Nassan is a minority. They disagree with Rabbi Nassan, as they hold that it is permitted to buy items from an idolatrous fair and cause benefit to idolatry, whereas the ruling of Rabbi Nassan is a minority opinion. And the Gemara responds, Rabbi Yochanan could have said to you, actually the rabbis do not disagree with Rabbi Nassan, and even according to this Baraisa, one is prohibited from causing benefit to idolatry. And the Gemara explains, and the fact that the Baraisa permits buying at a idolatrous fair, a Gentile fair, let's say, is not difficult, as here, where Rabbi Nassan prohibits buying items from a Gentile fair, he states his ruling with regard to one who buys from a merchant, as a tax is taken from him for the benefit of idol worship. Whereas there, in the Brisa that permits buying items at a fair, it states its ruling with regard to one who buys from a homeowner, i.e. a private individual, where the tax is not taken from him. There's no tax, right? So there's a question here of causation. Okay, this fair is frequented by people who, perform idolatry. They are idolaters. But there's no guarantee that doing business with someone that you buy something from in that fair is going to benefit idolatry. On the other hand, where you know that a tax is going to be taken that is going to go to benefit that pagan festival, then you should not be doing business there. That's the way I'm reading what we just read. That's what I've got for us today. Let's take a few questions. Joseph, have we gone over a proper and exact definition of idolatry according to the sages? We keep alluding to it. That's a great question, Joseph. Certainly we've seen that. I think the basic definition is that we know there is idolatry, right? That there are people who worship these gods, these false gods like the Baal and Asherah and Sepphoris and all the Roman gods. I can't even think of all the names. Mercury, is one. I think, was it Mercury is the one that, the way they worship it is by defecating at the foot of the of that statue. So we know that they do it, right? The sages will study what they do to the extent that they need to understand what idolaters do so that we can distance ourselves in every way from coming to do anything like it, right? So therefore, even if a Jew knows that it's phony and fake and idolatry and it's make-believe God, but he's like, hey, in Rome, do as the Romans do, and just to be polite to my very kind hosts, who are offering me a bed for the night, and let me, cook my kosher food on their stove, and what they do whenever they enter this room is, kiss that little figurine on the wall, so I'll do the same thing. Yeah, no, right? No. So basically, however idolaters worship, we can't do that. That's the basic definition. And then, there's obviously going to be different situations and all the different ways that idolatry is practiced. So how could we define everything that they do other than to say whatever they do, we don't do it? Lucy. And we don't even do something that has the appearance of doing what they do. As we saw, we don't bend down and pick up coins, their statue, even though we're clearly not worshiping the statue, but we don't even want to be perceived as doing that. Lucy, so the Romans accepted the Torah's story of Jacob and Esau. Did they generally accept the history presented in the Torah? I think it's case by case. Obviously, I'm sure that there were many Romans, probably the majority of Romans, could care less what the Jews believe. They're much more caught up in their own religion and practices. On the other hand, we see that there were emperors who had actually close relationships, friendships with some of the sages. And remember that this was a time in the world where people were very concerned, about prophecies and forecasts and predictions, right? So in the same way that now, somebody, might be a Jew or a Christian or a Muslim, and yet, because their friends are going to, get their fortune told by some gypsy fortune teller, they'll, just go along with it. Now that's prohibited in Judaism. We don't talk to sorcerers and necromancers, fortune tellers, etc. So any religious Jew will not get involved in that. You might say, well, there's astrology. Okay, astrology is different. Astrology can be idolatrous if it's practiced in that way. But there's also Jewish astrology, right? There is this understanding that there are seasons and that there are different spiritual influences, in the way that spiritual energy comes from God into the world at different times. So you have to really talk to somebody who's a rabbi who really understands this kind of stuff. But in the same way that people today, might be influenced what fortune tellers from some other religion have to say, the Romans, who are watching this ancient people that, from time to time get persecuted terribly and somehow aren't destroyed, and who have this very long view of history, apparently they have sages and wisdom. And what are these people saying? So in that sense, there were Romans, I think, that were very much influenced by Jewish teachings, just as today there are non-Jews who are very much influenced by Jewish teachings. Bill, this might not be prudent to do in a community where the idol is respected, but can one turn around and bow in such a way that one's posterior is what is facing the idol? Yes, and it basically said that. If you turn your body away to pick up the coins, where it's clear that you're not bowing to the idol, and if anything, you're disrespecting the idol, okay, then you could pick up your coins. Like you say, it might be a dangerous practice if, the adherents of that religion are there and have government power, and they might, unleash their persecution on you. But at least no one would look at you and say, hey, that Jew was worshiping that statue, because you went out of your way to make it clear that you were not doing that. That's what I've got for us today. With God's help, we'll be together again tomorrow, Thursday at the regular time, 6 p.m. Pacific. And we've set ourselves up nicely to do a double daf. And I think after that, we'll only be one page behind on the official Daf Yomi schedule. Have a great night.